Hello and welcome to the Cinementalist podcast for Cinementalist.com. My name's Andy. Sitting opposite me is Liam. Sitting next to me is Floki. Don't know why I did that the other way around this week, just for a bit of variety, I think.
It's always good to have variety.
I can't ask Floki how he is. How are you?
Yeah, pretty good, mate. Yourself?
Yeah, well, actually, no. I'm having one of those days.
One of those days.
Yeah, one of those days where everything you touch turns to shit.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's one of those, like every little thing I've done today. You know, I made myself a cup of tea and I dropped the spoon. You know, it's literally that level of annoying bullshit. So I fully expect this podcast to be terrible. You know, I've just
can't even find any respite in life's small pleasures.
Well, I'm hoping
the smallest thing.
I've got something to review this podcast as well. It's got a load of moving parts, so that's always fun to do. And yeah, you know, I'm just here for the ride. Essentially, we're just going to run this out and see what happens. Yeah,
at all times.
What doesn't help actually is because we recorded on Sunday for the episode that was released on Tuesday. It's only been like 4 days since we last recorded.
Yeah,
which is weird. It feels like there's like a refractory period, I think.
Yeah, the
podcasts.
pattern's all out of whack.
I don't know how some people do it every single day, and I'm not sure I could do that.
Crazy.
Yeah, I just feel
utterly
spent.
Crazy.
But anyway, now we've really undersold the podcast. Let's make it as good as we possibly can. Let's kick off with a bit of film news. Article from Variety. Johnny Depp to star as controversial French king Louis XV in Mai Wen's next film. Johnny Depp will star as French king Louis XV in the next film directed by French helmer Mai Wen, whose shoot, I'm probably pronouncing that horribly wrong, whose shoot will begin this summer, Variety has confirmed. The movie, whose title and exact plot are kept under wraps, is being produced by, here's some more pronunciation, Pascal Chacateur and Grégoire Solar's Paris-based Why Not Productions. They did A Prophet, by the way.
Oh, that's a big favourite for me.
Yeah, you absolutely loved A Prophet.
I do. I absolutely love it.
Well, we've got
one of the best crime films of the 21st century.
Well, we've got Wild Bunch International, who did Titan as well, handling the world sales for this. So a bit of, French pedigree going on.
Perfectly normal film, that one.
There's the lady who liked to fuck her car, if I remember correctly.
Oh, yeah, and it just gets even more batshit from there. It's quintessential, Sunday, post-Sunday roast viewing for, you and all your gran and everyone there.
Well, filming will take place for 3 months on location across Parisian landmarks, mainly at the Versailles Palace. So, this seems to be a bit of a comeback piece for Johnny Depp. I think the big question on everyone's minds with this one is he going to do his classic Johnny Depp thing of, the whole Willy Wonka, Captain Jack Sparrow, or if you're dealing with French nobles, they were a bit, should we say, flouncy and eccentric, and he does those sort of eccentric characters quite well, debatably well, doesn't he?
My favourite thing with him, and really the only performance that I genuinely like and enthusiastic about with Johnny Depp is his turn in Black Mass. Everything else is just neither here nor there for me.
Yeah. Well, it's one of those things. He's a sort of Marmite character, I think, isn't he? Or character actor, I should say.
Well, the overwhelming majority of his roles, if I'm talking as sincerely as I can, I would apply the label hyper-performative knob. With the exception of Whitey Bulger in Black Mass and Raoul Duke in Fear and Loathing. Just about anything else, I just get frustrated. It's all this very, very, I don't know, it's just very, very affected, and it never rings true for me. But Black Mass was fantastic. So is Fear and Loathing. So he does have it in him, Johnny Depp, to roll out something really cracking. But a lot of it is just pooey.
That's the Cinementalist definition right there.
Yes.
Pooey, Johnny Depp, pooey.
Yeah, but is he a talented guy? Yes, in very specific circumstances.
Oh, we shall see. Yeah, I don't know whether... I get the feeling he often overplays that kind of eccentric character stuff.
People might think I'm, like a sullen spoil sport. I just find the Pirates of the Caribbean films, I find them... They just irritate me. Tim Burton's Willy Wonka just is irritating. So
I rewatched that a while ago, and it is a very, very strange film. That I couldn't get on with it when it came out, and I couldn't get on with it this time round either.
It just makes me feel vexed. There's just something. There's like an artifice about that sort of thing. It doesn't. When I think of wild and crazy actors, somebody whose eccentricity illuminates the screen, I think of people like Rip Torn and Jack Johnny Depp, no, he needs to play more not really nasty sociopathic gangsters, because you seem to actually, do it pretty well.
Well, there's a niche there.
Yeah.
De Niro's not doing much these days, so, you need a younger man to step in.
He can't be fucked anymore, so.
My second article this week from filmnews.co.uk. This is an actor, by the way, that I realised that in nearly 200 episodes of content, we've never, ever mentioned him. I'm fairly certain we've never mentioned him, and he's a big star. Kevin Costner to direct new Western Horizon. The Yellowstone star has played Montana rancher John Dutton in the hit drama since 2018, but he's not ready to hang up his cowboy hats just yet. The 67-year-old actor is set to produce and finance the upcoming feature film through his production firm, Territory Pictures. He told Deadline, Horizon tells the story of that journey in an honest and forthcoming way, highlighting the points of view and consequences of the character's life and death decisions. What journey? The article never says. Kevin Costner's doing another Western. He seems to like Westerns, says old Kevin.
Well, I mean, I like Dances with Wolves and Kevin Costner's early stuff, like his performances in stuff like Bull Durham and even The Bodyguard and Revenge, Tony Scott's Revenge. Kevin Costner's early stuff, I do actually think that the dude has something about him. There is something, he has a certain sort of charisma, but with the exception of Let Him Go in recent years, which again, I wasn't overly favourable towards that film, but it did have some redeeming qualities. Outside of that, I found most of his performances very, very samey. Within the past 20 years or so, a lot of people accuse him of being samey all across the board, but I would be a bit more charitable than that. But Kevin Costner making yet another Western, I don't really find that very exciting.
Yeah, I mean,
because it's the genre that he plays for the most, it seems. So it's the genre that he seems addicted to. It'd be nice if he made, like, I don't know, just something.
Well, I mean, to me, I can't get enough of Westerns. I'm a huge Western fan. Kevin Costner, I agree with you, is not what I consider to be an auteur or anything like that. But I don't know. I mean, Open Range was okay.
Open Range was pretty decent film.
It was 2003. Robert Duvall was in that as well, and he was really good at that.
Michael Gambon.
Yeah. So me personally, I like a Western. I must check out Yellowstone. It's been a big gap.
I haven't seen any of it, but I know people who say good things, and they say that Costner is on like good form, and that it's quite an entertaining and compelling drama. So,
yeah, I'll have to give that one a look. Stop me if you've heard this story before. Joseph Gordon-Levitt to play cult leader Jim Jones in White Knight. Joseph Gordon-Levitt has signed up to play infamous cult leader Jim Jones in the psychological thriller White Knight. The Inception actor will star alongside Chloe Grace Moretz, who is portraying Deborah Layton, Jonestown survivor and member of Jones' People's Temple cult. White Knight is told from Layton's perspective and follows her as she rises through the ranks at People's Temple, only to turn on Jones and fight to expose the truth about him to the world before it's too late. Now, didn't I read you an article like this recently?
You said something else about a biopic of Jim Jones, or at least a fact-based drama about the Jonestown massacre.
Absolutely, yeah. This is another one.
So who was playing Jones in the first one?
It was supposed to be Leonardo DiCaprio.
That's it, yeah.
And as soon as I saw this story, I thought, oh, well, that's, we've done that wrong then, because that seemed to be pretty much confirmed. And then Joseph Gordon-Levitt being in, okay, so, they've changed their minds, or the article was wrong in the first place. No, there are going to be 2 Jim Jones Jonestown movies, both in production at round about the same time.
I'd say I look forward more to the DiCaprio one.
You think?
I don't have anything against Joseph Gordon-Levitt whatsoever, but I don't know. DiCaprio just seems like somebody who's, I don't know, mate. He just intuitively, it feels like his range would be a bit more accommodating.
Oh, I thought you'd be looking forward to Joseph Gordon-Levitt.
I like Joseph Gordon-Levitt. It's just that picturing him as Jones. I don't know. It's just a bit strange. I'm not saying that Leonardo DiCaprio, Jim Jones, or oh god, that's a fucking cinch. Who wouldn't go there immediately? But I think with the right cosmetic application, DiCaprio would probably be the one who would just pull it off. Pull it out of the basket. But I'm not gonna. I'm still gonna see the Levitt one. I mean, it sounds like an interesting and unpredictable move on his part. So yeah.
And my last article this week from the Hollywood Reporter. Robert Pattinson's The Batman runs nearly 3 hours with credits. It's going to be a very long film, this one.
Oh, for fuck's sake.
Matt Reeves' new The Batman movie runs 2 hours and 55 minutes. The hefty running time includes about 8 minutes of credits. Insiders of Warner Brothers confirmed to The Hollywood Reporter on Thursday. As such, it's the longest running time of any solo Batman pick and one of the longest for a theatrical superhero movie, behind rival Marvel's Avengers Endgame, which ran 3 hours and 1 minute on its way to becoming the number 2 top grossing film, blah, 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 blah. 3 hours is pretty much too long for almost any film. We've discussed this
Almost
many
any,
times.
yeah, with certain exceptions, such as Casino.
Yeah, that just about got away with it.
Casino and Goodfellas. I mean, Once Upon a Time in America, I think, earns it. Das Boot earns it. There's a lot of movies that do earn it, but a superhero film, what are they going to be doing with it?
Well, I've got so much hope for this one as well because it doesn't look like your standard interpretation of the Batman. So it may well justify that 3 hour runtime.
But
If it's going to be just another, I don't know, DC Comics, Ben Affleck, Justice League kind of debacle, then I wouldn't be particularly excited about it. But everything I've seen.
I watched the trailer for a little while ago now, and I must say, I mean, I like RPATs, but the trailer did look relatively generic. Unless they've updated it, they brought out a new trailer that actually is different.
Well, I quite like the art style of it, but yeah, we will see how that one goes anyway. But we're in for a bit of a drag on that one. It's going to be 3 hours long. Let's hope it justifies that kind of time frame. Anyways, that's the end of the news this week. Liam, you got a couple of reviews for us?
Certainly do. So first up, we've got Memoria. This is the latest movie from Apichatpong Weerasethakul.
Yes, I was wondering how you were going to pronounce that, and I think that's admirable.
That is how you pronounce it.
I would have stumbled over that.
Apichatpong Weerasethakul, who is a Thai director, and in his past movies, he's done stuff like Tropical Malady, Syndromes in a Century, Uncle Boon Me, who can recall his past lives, is pretty good, Blissfully Yours. He's quite a I'd say a rightfully celebrated art house director, predominantly art house director from good old Thailand. And this is his first venture outside of his home country. So dealing with an international production, because this is a Colombian production, essentially, with a mixed audio mix of English and Spanish. And so the lead character is Jessica. She's played by Tilda Swinton, and she is, I learned after reading the synopsis post-viewing, a Scottish expatriate, even though her accent doesn't sound particularly Scottish at all. But she is living in Colombia, and she seems to be the head, or at least one of the head honchos of some sort of business selling orchids and harvesting orchids and also studying plant pathologies. And she does this in Medellin or Medellin, depending on what pronunciation you prefer, which is where she lives. And her sister Karen is in Bogota, is hospitalized with some sort of weird respiratory complaint that she's not quite sure what the origin is. So Jessica is, just being the caring, dutiful sister, is visiting Karen in hospital and sort of liaises with Karen's husband, Juan, her brother-in-law, just to make sure that everything's all right. But Jessica has got a rather unusual problem. As we find out in the opening frame of the film, she is woken up in the middle of the night by a very large and sort of quite terrifying thudding noise. And it's very shocking and jolting. It's like this loud, deep, metallic thud almost. And she wakes up startled and looks around and, tries to detect the origin of it to no avail. And with every day that passes, she keeps hearing the noise at random intervals. Sometimes it only happens once. Sometimes it happens several times. And every single time, bar one, nobody else notices it apart from her. There's a moment where she's crossing the street and hears it, and a young man falls to the ground as if he's, he thinks that there's gunfire around him, and then he sort of awkwardly runs off in the opposite direction. That's the only time in the film where she recognizes somebody else noticing this very perplexing and rather scary sound that seems to be following her everywhere. And she goes to a doctor who initially inquires whether she has high blood pressure, and then there's talk of what they call exploding head syndrome, which is not as grisly as it sounds. It's just a sort of auditory disorder where you keep hearing loud bangs that are just emanating from your head, and they speculate that it's a neurological problem. But
I think I had that once.
Usually it's not serious.
Mm.
It's not. It's never actually something that's usually even on the books as being marginally fatal. It's just, but it is something that drives people insane.
I'm certain I had it once. I woke up thinking that I heard this huge bang.
Yeah.
And nobody else around me had heard it.
Yeah, it's relatively rare, but I imagine for the people who are affected with it, it must just make life absolutely miserable.
A jump scare around every corner.
Yeah, essentially. Yeah. Well, she keeps hearing this noise, and she's really trying to get to the bottom of it. And she actually goes to she's introduced to a young man called Hernan, played by Juan Pablo Urrego, who is a sound engineer. And he's like a friend of a friend, and she goes to meet him, and she's describing this problem of hers, and he tries to replicate the noise for her on his engineer soundboard, whatever the fucking thing is. And she's just absolutely, she's mystified, but then she becomes increasingly more worried and distressed. And, her journey of investigation as to what the origin of this sound is takes her on this sort of very unpredictable metaphysical journey that's very heavy in symbolism, essentially. And it's what you would call, I'd say, an apex example of that transcendental art house slow cinema movement. We're talking about a film that's got extremely long takes. And mood-wise, it feels more like an installation piece than what anyone would typically imagine as a film. For the most part, when we talk about the positives, I like Tilda Swinton's performance. I like just about any Tilda Swinton performance. I think she's a very, very compelling actor, and she does deliver solid work here as Jessica. It is very easy to feel as stressed out and harried and completely baffled as she does throughout the majority of this work. And the cinematography as well. The director of photography, Sayambu Mukdeeprom, he's done a few other things with Weris Ethical and other directors, and he's got a really, really wonderful eye, especially for natural expanses, and it captures Jess wandering around Colombia, and also sort of visiting museums and out in rural parts of the country, and which are really, really stunning to look at. And his photography captures that very, very nicely. And the long takes, the very, very long takes, admittedly, a lot of people become extraordinarily frustrated with that. But I find myself it might be mood dependent, but I usually find myself enjoying that kind of somewhat laborious visual meditation. Because it's essentially obscuring people's typical cinematic expectations, and it invites you to sort of feel something and have it be very, very experiential as opposed to your typical narrative.
The traditional reviewer's take on that one is if you say it's atmospheric and slow burning. What you mean is a really slow, long take film.
Well, yeah, but there are a plethora of examples of that kind of technique that I really, really like and find it both emotionally compelling and cerebrally compelling. And so all of that, I liked all of those aspects. And I was also very intrigued by the mysterious origin of this noise that Jessica keeps inexplicably hearing. So all of that's good, but after a considerably long journey, because the film was 136 minutes long, the final scene of the film, the final scene where, just the third act, the climax, whatever synonym you want to use for it, the final scene essentially starts 45 minutes before the credits roll. And it is absolutely batshit crazy. And upon finishing the film, I deliberated it for about 15, 20 minutes. I wasn't getting anywhere myself, so I thought, I wonder what other people have to say about this. What was their experience? And I remember reading a lot of reviews where people said they interpreted it as an analysis of Colombia's deep, dark history and the experience of foreigners on Colombian soil and colonialism versus the plight of indigenous people. And I thought, okay, I didn't get any of that from that whatsoever. And I actually rewatched that final scene twice, as objectively as I could. The dialogue, there's nothing wrong with the performances. There's nothing wrong with, the Tilda Swinton actually shares that portion of it largely with Elim Diaz, and it's very intriguing, but they converse for a large period of time. Something very, very wacky happens that I'm not going to give away here, and then the credits roll. I thought, right, okay, so you're setting yourself up as a mystery, albeit a deeply art house mystery. A deeply highbrow piece of work that, yes, I understand is meant to be experienced more as a mood piece than a typical narrative. I'm completely cognizant of all of that. But it sets itself up as a mystery and something of a horror with an extremely atypical esoteric edge. And then when it gets to the exposition, it's just what? It's really.
Is it just me that I'm really, really intrigued still? I mean, you're not saying it's awful.
No, it's not. It's not awful. It's. I mean, technically, in terms of production values and sound design, the film is not awful at all, and it's not awful in terms of acting and in terms of momentum, because the narrative is very, very unconventional. It's almost virtually narrative free, even though there is a central conceit. All of that is very, very well done, and there is a momentum of mystery for the majority of the running time. But I would say that the film does lull you into, expecting that you're going to get to the root of this very strange and potentially otherworldly complaint that Jessica is afflicted with. And I was fully expectant for it to be, very, very laterally thought, totally unexpected, and maybe incredibly thought-provoking, etc., etc., etc. I was fully expecting that, but what I didn't expect was for it to just completely veer off from that area of investigation entirely, and then sort of venture into something else, and then have a very, very peculiar little bit of exposition, right at the end, and then it was just boom, and that's it. So after that, I was just like, okay. Like,
so it's an art house film.
Okay, no, well, yeah, but that's the thing. I really enjoy a lot of art house films, but I have come to the conclusion that do I think that Memoria is a bad film? Not by my criterion of a bad film, no. But I found the resolution unsatisfying and very just impenetrable. It's unsatisfying and impenetrable. And the critics who are reviewing it in a glowing capacity, who have delivered their online analyses, I guess maybe they did see something that I didn't see at all. Perfectly happy to concede that, but I just have no fucking idea upon reading their interpretations how they arrived at that conclusion. Because I was thinking, okay, is this going to be about psychiatric illness, or maybe there's as it goes along, there's going to be expanding on themes about being a stranger in a strange land, or something else to do with esoteric philosophy, etc., etc. But no, it does. From my perception, it didn't touch on any of that whatsoever, and it just ends in a completely baffling 45-minute crescendo into what the fuck. So yeah, I liked the look, I liked the sound, I liked the performances. It was very interesting up to a point, but then it just really shit the bed for me. And it's not something that I feel compelled to watch again, which is a shame, because I do like what I've seen from Whereas Ethical, and Memoria did. It had the potential to be an extremely interesting, emotionally and intellectually captivating piece of work. And part of the film definitely has those ingredients mixing right. And then it just goes for me subjectively. So
yeah, fair enough.
have a watch. Have a watch. If you are intrigued by this, anyone listening, if you're intrigued by the sound of it, have a watch. Just don't say that I didn't warn you. So there we go.
Fair enough, dude.
And then next up, we have Clean. Now, I've been looking forward to this one for a while since reading about it early last year, I believe it was. This was directed by Paul Soleil, and it was also co-written, co-produced, scored by, and stars Adrian Brody.
Wow, that's quite impressive.
Yeah, Adrian Brody. This is this film, as I learned, was a passion project for Adrian Brody for a number of years now, quite a number of years. You know, the star of things like The Pianist, Darjeeling Limited, obviously. Well, Brody stars as the titular character. His character is only referred to throughout the film and credited as Clean. He is a sanitation worker or a garbage man. So, yes, very, very, you might initially think, oh, yeah, really, really Hollywood's a garbage man named Clean.
Sure, yeah.
Right.
But little spurious, yeah.
But that's not actually the reason he's called Clean. Because he might be, he's, as I said, he's a sanitation worker and he lives a very solitary lifestyle and he just seems to be happy, more or less stable, going to work night by night, throwing cans of trash into the back of his truck and keeping himself fit and tinkering around with things. But the reason he's actually referred to as Clean is that many moons ago, he lived a life that was replete with drug addiction and extreme violence. So for a considerable while now, he has been clean. We learn through sequences of hazy flashbacks, rather vague, that he had a daughter at one point, but he appears to have lost her in some fashion or another. And he's a wounded man who's just done everything he can over the past few years to turn his life around. And he's as I said, he is mostly a lone wolf, but he does have certain interactions that he seems to value. McKelty Williamson plays a man called Travis who attends the recovery group that Clean attends every week. It's like a group therapy to talk about addiction and demons. And he also happens to be the barber that Clean visits. So they seem to have something of a bond. RZA turns up as the owner of a pawn shop called Kurt. And Clean has a hobby of tinkering with various I mean, I think at one point he brings in, what the hell is it, like an Electro Lux or whatever the fuck that is, that he's fixed and mucked about with, and he brings it in, like for pawn shop Kurt. And also a young woman who lives down the road from him called Dionda, played by Chandler DuPont. She is a young girl living with her grandmother who doesn't appear to have any other kind of parental figure around. And Clean has noticed her about, and she seems like a sweet girl, and also appears to really remind him of the little girl that he somehow lost, which I won't sort of get into details of that, but he feels some sort of protective, paternalistic sentiments towards her, especially now that she sort of lives in the same vicinity of the neighborhood as rather, troublesome scallywag gangbangers. And he thinks, well, she seems like a lovely kid. I hate it if she got involved with the wrong crowd. I'll look out for her. I'll look out for her without coming on too strong. I'll make food and give it to her and her grandmother. And I'll just, when she misses the bus, I'll give her a ride and I'll just kind of drive by and I'll just say, hey, how you doing? Not to be too hands on, but just, a watchful, a guardian angel of sorts. Meanwhile, while all this is going on, while we are surveying the life of Clean, who, by the way, has a narration that is dangerously close to being plagiaristic of Taxi Driver. There's a lot of, these streets are full of trash and there's scum everywhere and somebody ought to clean it all up and it fucking makes me sick and that's specifically an Adrian Brody impression. He has, nowadays he basically sounds like a New York version of me. He is just a very scum and all this sort of thing. While all this is going on, we see, Glenn Fleshler, the scarred villain from True Detective. He's also Boardwalk Empire, quite a heavy-set guy, pretty sinister-looking dude. Well, he is a man named Michael, who appears to be some sort of local crime kingpin. And he's having trouble with his delinquent son, who's just been released from juvie and is fucking about with a lot of the same gangbangers that Clean is trying to keep away from Deander. And basically what ends up happening is that there's an incident where Michael and his men, Michael, who always tells anecdotes about his Russian dad, and is like, my father, Michael Sr., he always starts anecdotes like that. There's an incident that occurs where the paths of Michael and his crime syndicate and the paths of Clean will intersect, and Clean will find himself having to tap once more into this life of shocking violence and brutality and destruction that he has so desperately been trying to abandon for many years now. And he has to resort to the bad man in him and protect people that he has an affinity for and just save the fucking day, essentially.
Okay.
So, oh God, this was as I said, narration, it is a Taxi Driver ripoff.
Can I say 2 words to you just to gauge your reaction?
Right.
John Wick. Does he end up being the sort of action hero protecting it?
Yes, he does.
Yeah.
Yes,
it's one of those, isn't it?
Yeah. Narration the narration is essentially lifted from the dialogue of Travis Bickle, but just read out, altered words here and there, with Adrian Brody's gravelly growls, just, I'm beat up and I don't really enjoy life, but I'm trying to make the best of it, and like everything's kind of fucking shit, but I'm going to try and just look for the good things in life and remember the good things and hold on to the good people and keep away the bad people, and these streets full of fucking degenerates, and it's very much that.
And so on and on it goes.
Yeah, and for the sort of first half of the film, it's going for this gritty, contemplative character drama. We see Clean in a lot of his group therapy sessions. We see him communicating with these people. We see him essentially doing good deeds. Like whenever he's not at work, he does stuff like painting beat up old houses, and like at the local junkyard, he always comes and brings a load of ground corned beef for the dog that lives there, because he doesn't seem to ever get any attention elsewhere. He's always trying to, apart from working hard, he's just always trying to do a good turn. We see him do this, and largely, Brody's performance of this kind of haunted character is actually good. I did believe it. Brody, he has that kind of expression template and the way that he carries himself. He does nail that to, I'd say, a satisfying degree. I thought, well, yeah, there's just something about this man where, yeah, he is really hurt beyond the eyes, and he seems to be carrying around a shitload of baggage. I'm really interested to see, sort of what is his secrets? What is this man's past? How does it intersect with all of these very suspicious antagonistic elements in the film? And then it just goes bang. It literally goes from that. It goes from this slow burn, gritty character study that is crime inflected, just on its edges, and then it just goes wallop, Taken, John Wick, full on bang, total and utter 180 tonal shift, and then it just goes into extraordinary, and I'd say in context, baffling predictability, because Adrian Brody is someone that, I don't know, I just think most people would associate him as he is a character actor. He does things like, he's famous for stuff like, people are always going to remember him for The Pianist. He's somebody who has become, not somebody who is maybe very readily associated with, but if you were going to associate him with anything, he fleshes out lived-in characters. He's not the sort of person that you would put slap in a crazy, brainless, bonkers action fest, where he is, at one point in the film, he's like, somebody who has been put onto him, they're contacting an associate of theirs, and he's like, you sent me after the fucking Grim Reaper, and you're immediately reminded of John Wick, and he's like, he's the boogeyman, and all this sort of stuff. And yes, we find out that he is just this indestructible killing machine who is capable of fucking just about anyone's shit up with any implement that you put in his hand. He comes away from a lot of altercations mildly scathed, if at all. And just generic screenplay central. And I just thought, what the fuck was that? I have found about Brody's co-writing credit and the fact that he co-produced it and scored it. And given the first, I'd say, hour of the film, I thought, okay, so he's doing this gritty character study, and I imagine it's probably going to have some uncomfortable violence and some other themes that might make people a little bit uneasy. But it sounds like he's making a really bold move here. This is really interesting. It's like, no, it's just Adrian Brody wanted to do a film where he is the fucking big, tough, badass action hero, but he wanted to make it just a little bit more emotionally weighty than all of the other fodder that's out there. And that was it. And I just thought, what the fuck is he playing at?
I'll tell you why I said John Wick, actually, because I haven't seen the trailer for this. I know literally nothing about this film. All I've seen is the poster. And the poster is that close-up shot of a man on the edge. You know, and I thought to myself immediately, it's going to be a John Wick.
Yeah, you've got Adrian
Except this
Brody.
time it's Adrian Brody.
Adrian Brody with his, his great big beard and flecks of blood, and he's got a shotgun in his hand. Yeah. But when I was sitting down to watch this film, I don't know, I just had it in my head. I was thinking, is Adrian Brody kind of good? Is he doing a sort of You Were Never Really Here kind of thing, something taxi driver influence, but it isn't a straightforward and predictable vigilante thriller. We're going to get inside the head of this very complex and quite frightening man who has, a troubling moral compass, a lot of grey area, and, he does want to do good, but there are demons which put him in a very, in very, very compromising directions. Is it going to be maybe a little bit Schrader-esque? Something like that? No, it starts trying to be, it starts in a very bargain bin capacity, trying to be something in that ballpark, and then it just goes bang. Hi, I'm Adrian Brody, and I want to be like Keanu Reeves and Liam Neeson.
I.e. rich.
Yeah. But it just doesn't, Taken is a silly load of bollocks, but Taken doesn't pretend to be anything that it's not. Its fans pretend it's something that it's not, given a lot of the ratings, but it doesn't pretend to be anything it's not. John Wick, at least the first one, doesn't pretend to be anything it's not. Clean absolutely does, and I'm really disappointed because I like Adrian Brody. I do. I like the guy. I think he's a cool dude. He's a talented dude. And Paul Soleil has directed another thing that I'm actually going to talk about on the premium that I really enjoy. And yeah, I just had hopes of it. I thought it was going to be at least somewhat gritty and compelling. And you could go, hey, have you heard about this? This is kind of a cool film. Nah, it was terrible. It was fucking terrible. So yeah, shame really.
It really is the We Hate Everything podcast this week, isn't it?
Well, yeah, but I didn't hate Memoria.
No, that's true.
I didn't hate Memoria. It has its problems, but Clean has a shit ton of problems. So yeah.
Okay then, so TV of the week, big Netflix hit, CINEMENTALIST TV review territory here. This is called The Woman in the House Across the Street from the Girl in the Window.
Oh yeah, I've heard about this sort of parody thing.
Yes, well, it builds itself as a dark comedy thriller, but underneath its genre titles you get satire. And and parody, and whether it is or not is what I'll get into in the second half of my review. But in the meantime, I've got quite a lot of setup to get through, so bear with me on this one. I'm going to try and breeze through it and just hit the key points. This stars Kristen Bell as Anna. I really like Kristen Bell, by the way. I think she's a fabulous actress. She was amazing in The Good Place and just about everything I've ever seen her. And she's really, really great comedic actress, but a great dramatic actress as well, which serves her really, really well here. But anyway, she is Anna. And at the opening of this show, we get a cold open before the credits. She is making a chicken casserole somewhere in sort of suburban America. It's never
very
quite
suspenseful.
Clear. Yes, yeah. Well, she's actually doing it in quite a percussive, angry fashion.
Oh, yeah.
She's flattening out the chicken. She's banging and crashing around, all that kind of stuff. She gets it in the pot. She gets it in the oven. She puts on the timer. She comes back to the casserole when it's cooked. She opens the oven door and she tries to get it out with her bare hands. And obviously is immediately horribly burnt and she drops the casserole all over the floor. And then we see her going back to what she does every day, which is essentially sitting in her armchair, facing out through her living room window, observing suburbia before her and drinking huge glasses of wine. She's got one of those wine glasses that can contain like a whole bottle. You know, one of those.
Right, yeah.
I kind of think of them as novelty glasses, but I guess for some people, they really aren't a novelty.
Custom made for absolute pissheads.
Yeah, and she's got a big mixing bowl on her kitchen countertop that is, you know how normally you'd fill that full of fruit or potpourri or something like that? Hers is full of wine corks from all the bottles that she's getting through. And as she's staring out the window, we get a bit of voiceover, a bit of narration. And the voiceover goes like this. And it's delivered, by the way, in a British accent by Kristen Bell. My husband used to tell me that I have an overactive imagination, that I drink too much, that I can't let go of the past, that I make plans and cancel them, that I never wear a jacket but complain that I'm cold, that sometimes I speak with a British accent even though I'm not British. He's right about all of it. That's why he left me. And we get our title credits. So we're back to Anna, and she's staring out the window, sitting in her armchair with a big glass of wine. And she's got 2 bags of frozen peas strapped to her hands from the burns she sustained earlier. And she realizes, looking out the window, that everybody is taking their kids to school. And all of a sudden, she starts panicking. She's just in her dressing gown, but she shouts upstairs to her daughter, Elizabeth, that they're going to be late. And we get a cut to the school, and she's there sort of looking over the kids kind of wistfully in her dressing gown, and a load of the other mums are looking her up and down with disdain and distaste. They're all there beautifully manicured and made up, all going about their day. She's there half pissed in her dressing gown, looking a bit worse for wear. She gets back home later and feeling sorry for herself, pours another glass of wine. And she begins to sort of reminisce out loud about her ex-husband and everything that went wrong in her relationship, when she notices there's a new family moving into the house directly across the street from her. A very handsome young man, Neil, played by Tom Riley, and his young daughter, she's about 7 or 8, I would say, Emma, played by Samsara Yet. And she notices, again out loud, that there's no wife. So she immediately begins to take interest. Ooh, a hunky new guy across the street, single dad kind of thing. So she's staring dreamily out the window when she's called by her friend Sloane, played by Mary Holland. And Sloane runs an art gallery. And she's calling up Anna because she wants her to do another one of her paintings for this big exhibition that she's going to have soon. And she leaves her this message saying, look, I really need you to do another one of these paintings. I know that you gave up painting years ago, but I'd really like you to do one if you could help me out. Oh, and by the way, I'm going to set you up on a date with this really great guy. You've been single for far too long now. Go out this evening, meet this guy. I think you're really going to hit it off. I think it'll be good for you. I think it'll get your life back on track. So we see Anna getting ready for her night out. She's putting on her earrings and a nice dress. And she goes to see her daughter in her bedroom. And she asks her daughter, Elizabeth, how she looks. And her daughter kind of ignores her. She's sitting sort of playing on the floor with her doll's house, completely ignores her. And Anna says, well, can I have a kiss before I go? And Elizabeth says, I can't. Anna says, why? And Elizabeth goes, because I'm dead. All of a sudden, Elizabeth turns into a load of removal boxes with Elizabeth written on them. And Anna remarks, how do I keep forgetting that? And the show continues. Oh, you see what I mean about the parody?
Okay.
They make a gag out of the fact that she's constantly forgetting because she's always drunk that her own daughter's dead. But anyway. So Anna decides not to go out on this date, having just remembered that her daughter is in fact dead. She decides to have a bath instead. And she's sitting in the bath relaxing and she's checking social media on her phone when she starts hearing banging and clunking and crashing. And it's coming from the attic upstairs.
It's her date going, why did you fucking stand me up? You could have at least sent me a text or something.
Yeah, I don't think she ever messages the guy, but there you go. Anna's, she hasn't got her shit together.
Selfish boss.
If that's not coming across so far. But anyway, so she's hearing all this banging and clunking going on in the attic. And she pads her way gently out of the bath, water dripping down her upstairs landing, and looks up to the entryway into the attic, one of those flip down doors with the ladder behind it. And as she's standing there looking, the clunking suddenly stops and everything goes dead silent again. And Anna goes, fuck it, I really need a drink. So back to her armchair she goes, another huge glass of wine, falls asleep in her armchair looking out the window. Gradually, Anna sort of starts to get to know Neil and the new family across the street. There's a bit of a mix-up when he finds some flowers left on her doorstep. She thinks they're from him, but they have a little bit of a joke and a laugh about it. He seems like a really nice, affable guy. And she says, oh, welcome to the neighborhood. I tell you what, I make casseroles. I make chicken casseroles. I'll bring you one over later as like a welcome gift. And he goes, oh, you don't have to do that. She goes, no, it's no problem. It's fine. So we cut to that evening and Anna's going across the street with this brand new, nicely, freshly cooked chicken casserole in hand when suddenly it starts to rain. And as the raindrops hit her, she freezes in the middle of the street, drops the casserole, so it smashes everywhere, and she falls down as if she's sort of been paralyzed. She sort of has almost like an epileptic seizure in the middle of the street. Neil sees this from his window and comes running out to save her, gets her in from the rain and sits her back on a sofa and goes, "Oh my God, are you okay?" And she reveals that she has ombraphobia, which is a terrifying fear of the rain. Whenever it rains, she gets completely paranoid and freaked out. But he's there looking after her. And he reveals that he's a widower. That's why he doesn't have a partner with him. And she reveals the death of her daughter. So they've got a shared commonality with the grief between the two of them. And there's sort of romantic looks. And she's beginning to, she's been sort of spying on him through the window, but she's beginning to think that this may actually turn into a reality. So time goes on, they get to know each other a bit more. She also interacts with a handyman that is fixing her mailbox outside her front door. This handyman's been there for over a year, and he's, shall we say, a little on the slow side. And she's kept him around because he's a nice guy and everything. But she keeps saying, "How's the mailbox going?" He goes, "Oh, it's a difficult one, this, miss." She goes, "Yeah, no worries, you keep going." But, daily suburban life, she's getting to know Neil really, really well. At the end of the first episode, she's in bed and she's reading a mystery novel. And she's looking through her social media stuff and she finds Neil on there and she decides to add him finally as a friend. She feels like they've had dinner together at this point. They've really got to know each other. Perhaps this new relationship could be blossoming. And she adds him as a friend, puts her phone down beside her and tucks herself into bed. And as she goes to sleep, end of the first episode, there's another bit of voiceover narration and it goes like this. "I've gotten so used to nightmares, I've almost forgotten what it's like to dream of a future where I'm no longer alone. A future where I can trust someone again. A future where monsters don't exist." As she's delivering that last line, it cuts to Neil staring ominously from his living room window. Dun, 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 etc., etc., etc. All okay with the setup on that?
Yeah, pretty straightforward. Yeah, sure.
Yeah, fairly straightforward, and a fair few gags and things in there, and obvious bits that are parody, etc., etc. So yes, this is very obviously from the first episode satire, and I think it's a really good idea. I like this whole idea because those mystery thriller things are so ubiquitous at this point because there's been so many. The novels sell massively well. Everyone likes a murder mystery kind of thing. There's a lot of these Netflix series, and it's all doing the Alfred Hitchcock thing of someone looking out a window and seeing something they shouldn't. And of course, later on, she witnesses a murder. You can see where all of that kind of thing is going. You can see that there's characters coming into play that might have nefarious pasts and the twisty-turny, and I've covered a million of these on the podcast. So to lampoon it, to do a parody or a satire or like a scary movie-esque kind of thing of the genre with Kristen Bell in the lead, I think is a really good idea. The problem with this is that it forgets that it's a parody after the first episode, which is really, really strange. It's got quite a few gags in the first episode. It's got at least 8 or 9, and a good few of them I laughed out loud at, going, this is actually going to be good satire. It's going to be sending up all those genre tropes. I love that kind of stuff. It immediately sort of forgets that that's the purpose of what it's doing. And it starts to become one of the things that it's parodying. And that's sort of the worst thing you can do in satire, really. You're supposed to stay above it or to the side of it. You're never supposed to directly engage with it. But I was watching it and thinking, well, this show's actually doing something really interesting because it's lulled you in with the promise of satire. And then it gets going with this unfolding narrative and plot that's actually kind of compelling. And then occasionally it throws in a joke, which catches you completely off guard because you've forgotten at that point that it's a satire. Sometimes it goes whole episodes without being a satire, with only tiny little side gags and things which just make you sniff out your nose a little bit, but they could still easily be in place in like a straight ahead, mystery thriller. And I was sitting there thinking, this is kind of, is it doing that thing where it's gradually building up to, there's going to be a series of twists where you actually realize that even though it's been parodying and satiring and poking fun at the genre at certain points, it's actually going to come to this big conclusion that shocks you because you're expecting funny and it wasn't funny at the end. No, it doesn't. What it does is forgets it's a satire, occasionally references the fact that it's a satire, and then at the end reveals an absolutely absurd plot twist, a massively absurd plot twist that is befitting to a straight up scary movie parody, but is absolutely tonally deaf when it comes to what the rest of the show set up. You've got this ending that it absolutely doesn't deserve because at the end it goes, mad stuff, mad stuff, mad stuff. And you go, but For the past 4 episodes, it's been a straight ahead mystery thriller. I forgot I was watching a fucking parody. Basically, the balance of it is absolutely wrong. The ratio is wrong. It is 15% satire and 85% actually being the thing it's trying to lampoon. And as a result, it just really, really doesn't work. You get to the ending and you feel cheated. Because actually, when it is being a straight-ahead mystery thriller, actually, when it is doing the thing that it's trying to poke fun at, it's really rather good at it. And you're kind of there starting to make theories, and you're starting to, and there's some real dramatic moments and dark points in it as well. Where you go, this is really cool. It's a parody that turns into a real thing that might actually be better than the thing it's parodying. How clever. And then right at the end, it goes, bananas, balloons, clowns on sticks. And you just go, what the fuck? And it sets it even worse than that. Once it's done the bananas, balloons, and clowns on sticks, I don't know why I went with that combination, but I'm rolling with it. Once it does that bit at the end, then it tries to set up that everything goes back to normal. She gets on a plane, and then there's going to be a sequel because something happens on the plane. And you go, well, I don't want a sequel. What I wanted you to do was just pick a fucking lane. Either be funny and satirical, or be straight ahead mystery thriller. Or if you're really good at writing, and I'm sorry, it's not that well written. If you're really good at writing, walk the line between the two. It doesn't walk the line. It is a mystery thriller that is fairly average, but quite compelling with a few jokes thrown in. And I'm sure that's not the intent of the piece.
So the resolution is, would you say it's atrocious?
I just found it, like I said, tonally deaf is the term I would use. It doesn't know where to sit. It's trying to do two things at once, and it ends up doing both of them badly as a result. But for quite a long period of time while you're watching this show, you're quite convinced it's doing at least one of those things very well. And then it ruins it by bringing back in the parody thing. Well, why not just, it's the worst thing satire can do is become the thing that it's trying to poke fun of, and it does. And I think it thinks it's being clever at the end by going, had you, but really it's all silly. And actually you just feel cheated. Actually, you just feel like it's supposed to be the show's gotcha moment. And rather than going, you got me, you sit there and go, well, that's a bit shit, isn't it? And I don't want to take anything away from Kristen Bell, by the way, because her performance in this actually, like it always is in everything I've ever seen her in at the very least, is fantastic. It's a role that requires her to be really funny at points and straight man to other comedy bits. And there's a few little comedy characters that poke their heads in occasionally. They're really good. There's a really memorable bit where she goes to visit a lighthouse keeper. And the lighthouse keeper thinks she's a journalist and is quite pleased to finally get his moment in the sun. And every now and then you get a little glimmer of the parody and satire that it could have been. It's like they wrote a load of jokes and then cut most of them out. Yeah. Which is very, very strange. Kristen Bell's brilliant in it. I did actually enjoy the experience of watching it. But when you get to that end moment, me and my partner just sat back afterwards just going, yeah, I get what it was trying to do, but it just did not achieve it in the slightest. It's, like I said, it's a parody with all the jokes cut out. And if you want to watch that, then good luck to you. But just be prepared for that ultimate deflation. I said last week about The Silent Sea, didn't I? That it had a deflationary moment that didn't ruin the piece. This has got a deflationary moment that absolutely ruins the piece. And yeah, no, not for me. I'm afraid.
A waste of time.
A wasted opportunity. You got the right actress in the role. You got the right idea. I'd love to see a full-on parody of that kind of genre stuff, but this ain't it, I'm telling you. Anyway, trivia this week. Had a bit of trouble earlier with the trivia. I asked you for some advice. We went back and forth with a few things, and then suddenly realized that unexplained noises. Tilda Swinton heard a big bang in that film you weren't sure about. And we're about to hear some unexplained noises on this podcast.
Oh, do tell.
Well, it sounds like I'm going to play clips. I can do impressions if you like.
Why not?
But yes, unexplained noises are very much a thing. So let's have some trivia about these. Let's start off with the big one. I think most people know about this actually. And this is the bloop.
The bloop, yes indeed.
The bloop is the big kahuna in unexplained sounds. In 1997, a big year for auditory ocean mysteries, apparently, an extremely powerful ultra-low frequency sound was detected at various listening stations thousands of miles apart and traced to somewhere west of the southern tip of South America. The sound only lasted about a minute and was heard repeatedly over the summer, but never since. Bloop is generally believed to be the sound of a massive ice quake, but scientists haven't totally ruled out the possibility that the sound originated from something organic. That's where things get eerie. If an animal was the source of the bloop, it would have to be larger than a blue whale. The most fanciful of all theories stems from the fact that bloop's location is somewhere close to author H.P. Lovecraft's fictional sunken city of R'lyeh, where the creature known as Cthulhu lies dead but dreaming. Cthulhu can best be described as part man, dragon, and octopus, which seems as likely a source for any of the ocean's greatest oral anomalies.
Yeah, they've always theorized, haven't they, that it's if it is an animal, it would be considerably larger than a blue whale.
Yeah. There's if you look it up, there are quite a few recordings of it going around. It is quite an ominous, freaky sound.
Yeah, absolutely.
By the way, I did look up the pronunciation of Roulier, and that's my best version of it. Apparently, H.P. Lovecraft himself said that the whole point of those kind of words that he wrote was that they were unpronounceable to humans. But that doesn't stop podcast hosts from trying live on it. What about the hum? The hum has been recorded on several occasions, mostly during the last 50 years or so. In these cases, there have been reports of a relentless and troubling low-frequency humming noise that can only be heard by a certain portion of the population. It's difficult to pinpoint when instances of the hum began, but it's been well documented since the 1970s, and since then, cases have popped up all over the world, from Ontario, Canada, to Taos, New Mexico, to Bristol, England. In most instances, the affected group only makes up around 2% of the population, but for those individuals, the hum is largely inescapable and impossible to track. Those affected report never having heard noises before and say the hum is generally heard indoors and becomes louder at night. It's also most common in rural and suburban areas and among people between ages 55 to 70. There you go, the hum.
Anyone offered speculation on what the possible cause is?
Yeah, no one's really got a good theory, and there's a lot of speculation about it could be wireless communication devices. It could be power and gas lines can be known to hum in certain. You could have a whole street where the entire gas line is resonating, that kind of stuff. But it seems to be common enough that it's recognized as there's probably something actually behind this. But I mean, it could be different causes in different locations as well.
Freaky shit.
It does sound massively irritating, like terrible tinnitus.
It sounds extraordinarily irritating, yeah.
There's the Seneca guns. Ghostly detonations have plagued residents near upstate New York's Seneca Lake and along North Carolina's Outer Banks for more than a century. Scientists have speculated that earthquakes might be responsible for the cannon-like sounds, which rattle windows and can even open closed doors, but they've never found direct evidence of the connection. Other potential causes include meteorites, covert military operations, and methane gas bubbling up from beneath the water to burst with a pop. Though some geophysicists still debate the cause of this persistent phenomenon, they consider the harmless rumbles more of a curiosity than a pressing scientific problem. I mean, I'd consider it pretty pressing if it was loud enough to open a door. Wouldn't that freak you the fuck out?
It would freak me the fuck out, yeah.
There you are alone.
Pressing enough.
Your door suddenly slams open. I'd absolutely shit myself. I would leave. Why does anybody live near Seneca Lake?
Nutters.
There's electronic voice phenomena. For decades, paranormal believers have been picking up stray voices on tape recordings, which some think come from dead people or extraterrestrials. As a website for paranormal enthusiasts explains, picking up electronic voice phenomena, or EVP, often requires a person to listen to the recording with headphones and work hard to pick the voices out from the background noise, and sometimes a recording will have to be played in reverse for the message to appear. A similar technique was used by teenage Beatles conspiracy theorists in the late 1960s when they played Strawberry Fields Forever backwards in an effort to hear what sounded to some like I Buried Paul. I've actually experienced electronic voice phenomena.
You have?
Because I used to work as an audio engineer, and it's actually surprisingly common. You call them phantom frequencies and that kind of thing. And it happens when, particularly if you're doing something like layering distorted guitars. So you've got 3 guitars with distortion all on top of each other playing slightly different things. They end up interacting with each other in ways you don't expect. And it can often sound like there's a fourth part in the middle there. And I've never had anything like a voice, for example, but definitely hearing things that aren't there. Because I mean, music is just notes, and notes put together are chords. So if you have those individual notes from different guitar parts interacting with each other, sometimes they create chords and sympathetic noises and things that you don't expect. But it's always a little bit freaky.
Yeah, it sounds extremely freaky.
When you listen to it back and there's a fourth guitar part, like a lead guitar line when there's actually 3 rhythm guitars playing. Sometimes we used to use it as like a guide. If you can hear a melody in there, we try and pick it out and work it out on guitar. It's almost like the song was writing itself at that point.
That's pretty cool. Yeah. Scary.
Yeah. I believe Black Sabbath's engineers said that yeah, Black Sabbath engineers, they would, wouldn't they? It's this nice bit of mythos for the Black Sabbath satanic kind of thing. But I remember them saying that they worked in some recording studios where they listened to something that was recorded yesterday through the monitors, and they'd hear something in the background. They go, what is that? Let's try and isolate it. Let's try and get it out. It's some noise that's not supposed to be there. When you isolated it, it was a little girl singing.
What the fuck?
Now, I never came across that, but that would be a moment.
I think they're just making shit up.
We've been recording the podcast for quite some time now. I've never heard of Phantom Frequency. I mean, I've heard a lot of bollocks from both of us, but I've never heard of Phantom Frequency.
Apparently, you said that apparently you said at one point you were doing some playback and you heard the frequency go really, really low, and I sounded like Satan or something.
Oh yeah, last week's podcast. I must have knocked something when I went to edit it, but all of a sudden you started playing at half speed. Holy hell, do you sound like Satan on half speed?
Well, plot twist.
What about the vocal Memnon?
What?
Built nearly 3,500 years ago, the Colossi of Memnon guard the tomb of Egyptian pharaoh Amenhotep III near Luxor. But one sentinel was not silent at his post. He sang at dawn. This sparked a tourist craze, and visitors left ancient Yelp reviews in the form of graffiti. Julia Babila, a Roman noble who visited in 130 AD, wrote a poem on the statue's leg, comparing the sound to ringing bronze. The music apparently died around the time Roman Emperor Septimus Severus ordered repairs to the sculpture in 200 AD. That could be a clue. Perhaps cracks in the stone collected dew, creating sonic vibrations as temperatures rose and warmed the liquid.
Well, I've never, ever heard of that one.
I can absolutely believe that, though. Cracks in bronze and water expanding in it, and it makes it sort of hum and sing.
Yeah, that does sound plausible.
Bronze is massively resonant as well. Like if you knock it with a hammer, you get that. It's a bell, isn't it?
It sounds more plausible than Cthulhu have anything to do with anything. There we go.
I like the idea of ancient Yelp reviews as well. People came from far around to see the singing statue. And my last fact this week, there's the 52 hertz whale. This animal, also known as the loneliest whale in the world, calls at a highly unusual 52 hertz, well above the normal frequency. Scientists have been listening to 52 hertz for decades, and recently filmmakers raised $400,000 on Kickstarter to seek the mammal out. It should be noted that the fundraiser reached its goal through the help of Leonardo DiCaprio, another mysterious beast. There you go, Leo DiCaprio out there searching for whales. He's got too much money these days.
They haven't found the 52 hertz whale.
No, but I am very interested in this $400,000 campaign. I presume it's all being documented. Be very, very interested to see it.
You would hope so, yeah.
Because the theory is as well that because this whale is singing at a completely different frequency to all the other whales, that he or she is not actually able to communicate with the others. They can't hear that frequency. Hence the loneliest whale.
That's very sad.
It's a real bummer to end this podcast.
You made me feel all fucking sad now.
Yeah, well.
Such is life.
Such is life. Thank you so much for listening to the Cinementalist podcast. That's the end of our free episode this week. We're about to go and record the premium. Liam's got some extra takes. What are we doing?
So as I mentioned last week, among my extra takes were going to be Just a Boys Game, but we got waylaid by, well, not waylaid, but we got into our Thrones chat, which was very, very enjoyable. And then I'm going to be taking a look at another film involving director Paul Soleil and Adrian Brody called Bullethead, which is one I thought was actually good. And then we're going to be talking about old Malkovich, aren't we?
We are. We're going to be doing a John Malkovich.
John Malkovich is also in Bullethead, so...
Yeah, that was enough of a link for us.
Exactly.
We've been trying to do a John Malkovich special for a while, actually, but something else has always come up. We've got too many reviews or whatever. We thought this week, actually, we'll have a bit of a chat about Mr. Malkovich.
Absolutely.
Why not? But yes, thank you so much for listening. Please check out cinementalist.com for a link to our Patreon page. You can follow us on Twitter at Cinementalcast, and you can follow Liam at
the Movies at Wacko Jacko's Flicks.
I'm looking forward to some positive reviews, man. We just had one of those weeks, haven't we? It's occasionally you get a week where everything turns up a bit wonky. So,
well, I think I obviously haven't seen the girl who shoved things up her arse and did all this and that and the other.
That's
thing.
A better title. I like it.
But Clean sucked, but Memoria definitely had its audiences. But to me, I was just absolutely baffled. And sometimes I like being baffled. Sometimes you can be baffled in a way that's very welcome. But that wasn't necessarily one of them. But it wasn't a bad film.
Fair enough.
It was just like, you know, here's your brain on drugs, you know, yeah.
Okay then, guys. Thank you so much. Hope to see you on the premium. If not, free one next week. Take it easy.